on the cloud. Good. Okay, we will officially begin. So I want to thank everybody for coming. And I want to just, for those of you who don't know, or for those of you who know, remind everyone that we have invited 3 of our sister clubs to join us tonight. So we will be joined by members of Downtown Independent Dems, Village Independent Dems, Hell's Kitchen Dems, and ourselves. And we will ask everybody who's not part of the Grand Street Dems to leave after the 2 forums so that we can discuss our process going forward in terms of endorsement, if we're going to do a re-endorsement or not. Okay, so okay with everyone? There's also been a request, so I will ask everyone to think about this, and we'll decide this as well when everyone leaves and I don't know if they're still going to want it because there's only 2 candidates, but WBAI wanted a copy of the tape to play on their Thursday night show. So I would like everyone to think how you are with that, and if people are for it or against it. And of course, we'll ask the candidates if they want to do that as well. Any questions about that? No. Okay, so let's start with some updates while we're waiting for our candidates. We have, I think first do we have Sustainability Group? Sarah, would you like to start with an update for us? Nice to see you. You need to unmute.
Are you sure? I just allowed that to happen.
Sarah, you need to unmute.
Hooray,
There you go.
Success.
Okay, good.
10th time's a charm. Okay, hi everyone. Thanks for your patience. I think we're now sorted. It's nice to see you. And I've got 5 minutes, right, Marianne? All right, keep me to time. And if I go long, shout at me, please.
Just a PS, Sarah, if you ever need more time than that, please let me know ahead of time and we'll schedule around that.
Roger that. Hey, everybody. So this is our climate and sustainability update. And as a reminder, we're all here and listening. That means we're thinking about climate or maybe a little bit interested. And I'm looking at my notes because otherwise I'll forget what I'm saying. According to the Yale Center of Climate Communications, 28% of Americans are waiting to be asked to take political action on climate. I can link to that later. But as we know, about only 1% are doing so. So consider the following 3 things, an invitation for all of you to take action. Tonight, I have 2 updates and 3 actions you can take on climate. All involve political advocacy. And I'll go from the most local to the broadest in scope. Number 1, you may recall from other GSD meetings that composting food waste is a proven climate solution because it reduces super polluting methane emissions by an surprisingly enormous amount. New York City has the opportunity, and I would argue the obligation, to make composting widely accessible and easy for people to do. Unfortunately, Mayor Adams suspended the rollout of in-building compost service. But just a couple weeks ago, the City Council introduced legislation to make in-building composting universal across New York City, which would be great. The more, the better. The easier it is, the more people can make this happen. I recommend that everybody here thank Council Speaker Adrienne Adams for supporting this legislation. She was really behind it. She's been very public about it. And I think Melissa's going to drop her email in the chat, and I can also follow up with that. The more emails she gets on this, the better, and she can continue to be a champion. I also know through a different neighborhood group that Chris Marte's office is aware of this legislation and will support it when it's made more public to other members of the council. Moving up out to the state level, there's more good pro-climate legislation in the works as of this afternoon. The Build Public Renewables Act passed in the State Assembly today, and this legislation will enable the New York Power Authority to build and own new renewable generation and allow the public entity to phase out existing fossil fuel plants as quickly as possible. This is really good because it allows public facilities to do that rather than waiting for private facilities to do it. I won't go down the path of public-private energy generation, but this is a very good thing. So our Assembly member, Yuli New, supported the legislation. She was one of the sponsors of it. I recommend contacting her office to express thanks and urge her to continue to support pro-climate legislation. Next, I think the legislation goes to Ways and Means, and I will keep an eye on that. Finally, I think I've got a minute left or something. I'll zoom out really, really big. To the national level, and this is an invitation. The group Climate Changemakers organizes weekly volunteer hours of action. Each hour is devoted to high impact political actions, including contacting elected officials, putting pressure on big business and media, and doing other forms of outreach. Each hour is devoted, there's no experience required. You just show up, the organizers do the work, volunteers show up and take an action in a very tight 60 minutes. Most weeks I join the hour of action on Thursdays at 8 p.m. I'm happy if any of you want to join me. It's a friendly group. You just turn up and do what they say and customize it. It's pretty easy. And Melissa's gonna drop a link in the chat for that. And now I'm wrapped up, and thanks everybody.
Thank you so much. That's I love your brevity and the importance of what you're saying. Thank you, Sarah. Okay, now we want to have an update from our traffic committee. Bill Ferns, are you on?
Yeah.
Oh, there you are. Okay.
Can I share the screen for a second?
Sure, I'll make you co-host. Okay.
Okay, so it's still.
Yeah, there you are. There you are.
Okay, great. Let me just skip the share screen and let me get the screen I want to share. Here it is. Okay. So I'll be pretty quick. Everyone can see that, right? Right, the traffic, the QR code?
Yep.
No? Am I not? It says I'm.
Yes.
It is there. Okay.
Yes.
Okay, because I don't see what the share screen does. Okay, so the QR, I have a QR code there. We've started setting up a group of people who aren't just interested about the traffic, but are willing to do things. And it's sometimes as simple as writing a letter to CB3 or someone else, or making 311 reports, things like that. So there's the QR code. You can sign up. It's a little Google form. It's pretty easy to do. We are up to 23 people who have said that they will volunteer to do things, up from 15 from our last report. We really need more people, whether you even in the district or not. I'm sure many of you have are affected by the crazy traffic down here. So let me know. Just today, hot off the presses, so I didn't have time to write it up, is that Chris Marte, his chief of staff, Caitlin Kelmer, and some of the leadership from Community Board 3 met with the Department of Transportation about their Grand Street plan. To refresh most of your memories, if you don't remember, the DOT wanted to set up a plan where traffic heading down Grand Street could not turn right onto the Clinton Street entrance to the Williamsburg Bridge, but instead they'd shuffle them down 2 more blocks to Norfolk Street and go up Norfolk Street to get to the Williamsburg Bridge. Basically kicking the four-wheeled tin cans down the road 2 blocks. We had asked previously the Department of Transportation how they would keep people from making right-hand turns onto Clinton from Grand. They said, oh, we'll set it up. It'll be self-enforcing, which any of you who have lived near places where there's like no left-hand turns kinds of things, or don't block the boxes, know that self-enforcing doesn't happen in New York City in the driver's world. So we're pushing against that plan. Also, it turned out the Department of Transportation admitted that they had not given any thought to the idea that there were loading zones on Norfolk Street that would impede the through traffic. So they had proposed that they would do a 1-month trial of setting the traffic up Norfolk Street to see how it would go. I know that Council Member Marte's office sort of pushed back that was a bad idea. Community Board, I think most people pushed back that it was a bad idea, though one person was waffling. We are opposed to that so far because the feeling is, especially anyone who went through the East River Park debacle, there's no reason to trust the deep state technocrats of the city of New York that they would actually roll it back. So we're going to keep pushing for a much better plan. So that's basically what, I'm asking the people to join up. We do have a traffic plan. Let me scroll down this stuff. You don't have to see this. If you point your camera to this, you will see that we have a one-page plan of what we'd like to do for New York, for the area to deal with the traffic. So right now we're just trying to get the Department of Transportation do something creative about the neighborhood, not just say, oh, we're going to just make traffic go up Norfolk Street. So for those of you who are in the area, you get the idea. Department of Transportation does sort of feel like, well, maybe the only way this will really get fixed will be if there is if congestion pricing finally comes in. But that's such a political hot potato right now that we'd like them to do something else. So that's basically it. Let me just, so if you haven't pointed your QR code, let me just point this to the plan. If I can get to it quickly, I might actually already have it up. So, no, it didn't go there. Sorry. Let me go back to, oh, here it is. So this is the plan that we have. Just for those of you who are new for Grand Street, we want to have a priority lane for the M14A because the traffic to Williamsburg Bridge really slows it up. We want consolidated bike lanes on the south side of Grand Street, 2 ways, in other words, so that the bus lane, I'm sorry, will be able to go impeded westbound on Grand Street. We also pushing to have Essex Street crossing be much more of a pedestrian mall and minimize how much through traffic goes there. And definitely pushing for more reliable enforcement. It's been hit and miss. The captain of the 7th precinct has gotten some traffic enforcement agencies to direct traffic at Clinton and Grand. The Essex crossing people have actually leaned on truck deliverers to not block the bicycle lanes on Clinton Street. They still do occasionally, but it's much better than it was a month ago. And we're also pushing that there be a ADA compliance elevator somewhere in the Delancey Street, Essex Street subway stop, because that's actually a very major subway station for New York, for the Manhattan. And there's subway stations in Manhattan that have far fewer passengers go through, and they do have accessibility. So that's the basic idea. Sorry if I went so long. Let me unshare screen.
Thank you, Bill. And I really encourage everybody to go in and see what's happening with both of our committees. People are working very hard on some very important issues for us. So check it out. Okay, before we begin, I want to say 2 things. I'm going to stop the recording and start it again in case we do decide to give the recording to WBAI. I want it to just be the forum. So as soon as I see that Anna Maria Archila is on the call, we will do that. It's scheduled for 7:15. We are scheduled for 15 minutes a person. Our district leader, Carolyn Lasko, is going to be our timekeeper, and I appreciate you doing that, Carolyn. And we have 15 minutes since we have 2 and not 3. If it seems really urgent to go a couple of minutes over, I think we're okay with that. And I think the candidates get to decide how much of that they want to be presentation and how much they want to be Q&A. And the one other thing I will say, since we still have 2 minutes, is that on June 16th, from 5:30 to 7:30, the Grant Street Dems are having a primary kickoff. So we know there'll be at least one primary, and we're going to have it outdoors in the Hester Street lot, 5:30 to 7:30. We're going to have a band. We're going to have food. We're going to invite a bunch of our local politicians, our electeds, and some of our endorsed candidates. So we encourage everybody to try to come by. It'll be nice to see everybody in person, and the band is really fun. If anyone was there last year, you know, we had a really fun band last year. So I've been looking forward to when we could go back outside and do stuff like this. So it'll be June 16th, 5:30 to 7:30, and you will get more information about that. I would really like to encourage people in the Grant Street Dems to volunteer. We're going to need people to help people come in to I almost said man the table, to person the tables, to do like setup. So please, if you're interested in doing that, and I will ask you again later, I'll ask for some hands for volunteers later. And thank you, Melissa, for putting that in the chat. So there's a way to volunteer in the chat. Has she come in yet? Has anybody been watching who's coming in? Anna Maria Archila? Oh, okay, good. Julie just said she will edit the video, so I don't have to start and stop. I appreciate that very much. Because every time I have to start and stop, there's potential for something going wrong. So since we're waiting, I'm going to ask, and we have a couple of our endorsed candidates on the line. And I know one of them is not feeling so great and has asked if she could speak early. So I'm going to invite her to speak now, Vittoria Fariello, and just to give us updates and to hear how how it's all going, especially in light of redistricting. Hey, Victoria.
Hi, Marianne. Thank you so much.
Mhm.
Thanks for letting me go. Yeah, so unfortunately, I was diagnosed. Well, I got a positive test of COVID on Thursday evening. Thankfully, I can report really all I am is exhausted. So no fever or anything else. But please do keep your masks on when you're in close quarters. It's not a big ask, and it's rising now in our city. So let's take care of each other. But in terms of the campaign, of course, we're full speed ahead. We don't know exactly what the district's going to look like, but we're pretty confident that at least the Grand Street, Dems area and DID's area is going to continue to be in the district. So we are not slowing down. We are getting ready to drop our first mass mailing to our district. And as soon as we know what those lines are going to look like. So anyone who has done this knows that mailers are incredibly expensive. So we're doing a very special fundraising push these next 2 weeks. And if you'd like to give tonight, I can drop in the chat here the donation link. We are doing virtual phone banking this Wednesday from 5:30 to 7:30. If anyone can join, it was actually really fun last week. People really enjoyed it. So if anyone wants to join, we'd love to have you. We're really fortunate to keep getting new volunteers and interns. They've just been really enthusiastic. It's been really great. And if any of you are interested in volunteering, I will put that link in the chat as well. Obviously there's lots to do in a campaign. There's postcard writing, there is canvassing with us out. That's a lot of fun. I like that a lot. And there's phone banking, and at some point we'll be doing texting as well. So there's lots to choose from, but I'll put all that in the chat, and then you can reach out to me directly, and I'll put my email in the chat. And I'll just say it quick. It's victoria@victorianyc.com, or you can reach out, or you can reach out to Dawn, my campaign manager, her email is dawn@victorianyc.com. I'm going to put all of this in the chat right now so you guys can see. Thankfully there's still a lot of enthusiasm. Really happy to be out there, and we're looking forward to, at first we were like, what, another 2 months? But now we're like, great, another 2 months. So we're really looking forward to it. More time to connect with our voters, with our communities, and to really make sure that everybody's voice is heard. So I'm going to drop those links in the chat. Thank you all so much. And was that, oh, yes, there we go. Okay, it's all in there.
That's great. Thank you, Victoria. Also, stay tuned because Grand Street Dems are going to sponsor a fundraiser for Victoria soon to come. And there's less rush now since we have a little bit of an extended time. So stay tuned for that and feel better.
Thank you.
Okay, so let's start. Everyone's here to hear from our Lieutenant Governor candidates. And I see that Anna Maria Archila is on the line. So I want to get started. Just again, to clarify, each candidate gets 15 minutes. If we decide we're really in it, we need another couple of minutes, that's okay, since we have two, so we have a little breathing space. It is being recorded. So if there's anything that you want to say that you don't want recorded, maybe this isn't the time and place to say it. So Anne Maria, you get to decide how much of a presentation you want to do and how much Q&A. But before we begin the time, I would like to say, you did an article, you did an interview with the city, and there's something I want to repeat that you said, which is that you want to model how to be accountable for regular people with an aim to alleviate the pressures they're feeling and a focus on affordable housing, childcare, and support for immigrant communities. And that's really what we're about. So thank you for that. And the floor is yours.
Thank you so much, Marian, and hi, everyone. Thank you so much for giving me the opportunity to meet with you. What an honor. My name is Ana Maria Archila, and I am a candidate for Lieutenant Governor. But I have been a community organizer for 20 years. I came to the US when I was 17 years old from Colombia. And it was in New York that I found a new home. New York was the place that welcomed me as a young immigrant. And New York was the place where I found the safety to be who I am, to love who I love, to be queer, to be proud, to feel safe. And New York was also the place where my children were born, where they first looked at the sky, where they first walked. And it is the place, actually, where I learned about the power of people who organize to fight for one another, to demand what we deserve, the power of workers who organize to demand dignity in the workplace, or young people who organize to pursue their dreams. And it should be a place where everyone lives with dignity, with the safety that they have a home, with the safety that they can survive and thrive, because New York is one of the richest states in the country and one of the richest countries in the world, but it's also one of the most unequal places. And it is an inequality that has been compounded by decades and decades of policies that affirm structures of exclusion. I started as a community organizer on the North Shore of Staten Island, working in a community of day laborers in a neighborhood called Port Richmond. And in that community, I learned the lessons that have carried me for the last 20 years. When I started, I was teaching English in this tiny little storefront on Port Richmond Avenue in 2001, right before 9/11. And my task was to open the doors of this tiny storefront and to allow young people who had crossed the border by themselves and who were 15, 16, 17-year-old kids, or 20, people in their 20s who were working in construction, in delis, and restaurants. They would come at the end of a long day, 10-hour long day, 12-hour long day, and they would say, okay, I'm here, I'm ready to learn English. And for me, as a young person myself, being in their presence was very moving, because I understood how resilient people can be in the face of so much exploitation and like really difficult circumstances. They were working in jobs that were backbreaking and where they were getting paid half of the minimum wage, and they were renting beds because they didn't have enough money to rent a room. Despite all of this, they still had sort of their dreams were very alive, and their dreams were the force that drove them every day. And so I understood, wow, like people's dreams are a powerful force, but also the things that make lives hard are often the results of policies that are made by people. Immigration policy, housing policy, wage and hour enforcement policy. So I spent the last 20 years building organizations that belong to people, that are rooted in community, organizations that allow people, working class communities, immigrant communities, Black and brown communities, to be taken seriously, to be respected, to be listened to be respected in our democracy. And after doing that work for 20 years, I looked at this election cycle in New York and realized we were heading towards a coronation. And when coronations happen, our people lose. Working families lose, middle-class families lose, immigrants lose, poor people lose. And it felt unacceptable to allow that to happen after what New Yorkers have endured of so much loss and so much difficulty during the pandemic. So I launched my campaign for Lieutenant Governor with the idea that if we fought, we could make space for the issues that matter to most people. And everywhere I go, whether I'm talking to someone in Buffalo or in Sullivan County or on Long Island or in the North Shore of Staten Island, people talk about housing as one of the things that feels like the pressure that they are facing most intensely. The cost of housing, the fear of losing their homes, whether people are renters or they're homeowners. People talk about the fact that access to childcare and home care for aging family members or themselves is really hard to find, and that they are sandwiched between jobs that don't pay enough and the cost of living that is rising all the time. And the fact is that those things are actually fixable. New York doesn't lack money. That is not the problem in New York. The problem is that we have elected officials that have the ear and the priorities of the real estate industry and Wall Street and billionaires at the top of their agenda. That's partly because our elections are funded the way they are funded. But it's also because those industries surround the governor's office with a fortress of lobbyists and donors. And in that equation, people lose. And for as long as I have been organizing, the governor's office has been the block that we had to overcome when we wanted to improve wages for workers, when we wanted to improve rights for tenants, when we wanted to have access to college for immigrant youth. And the lieutenant governor's office was sort of nowhere to be found, not that helpful, not that present. And it doesn't have to be that way, because the lieutenant governor is actually elected by the people. It is not an appointed office. It should not act as a representative of the governor. It's an office directly elected by New Yorkers. And because of that, it derives its power and its mandate from the people. And it should be an office that's actually functioning more like a public advocate, someone who is elevating the priorities of people whose voices get drowned by the fortress of lobbyists and donors. So I have been talking to New Yorkers everywhere about the idea that the lieutenant governor's office should be an independent voice that's elevating the issues and the priorities of working families. Affordable housing, access to childcare, access to home care, the fact that we should stop criminalizing Black and Brown communities and instead invest in the things that make communities safe. And that is how I find myself here before all of you. And in this conversation, I'm very eager to hear your questions, your ideas, your advice, your feedback, as I engage in this journey to try to redefine an office that should be more useful to working families across the state that really, really need Albany to work for all of us and not just the real estate industry and billionaires. So thank you for the opportunity to meet with you tonight.
Great, thank you so much. So I'll ask people to raise their hands. I'm going to take advantage of being the moderator and host tonight and ask the first question, if that's okay. And you've addressed this, but I'd like to know specifically how will your campaign address these issues of systemic racism, and at the same time deepening the people's understanding of how it works and what it's causing?
So we are living in a moment of real reckoning around race and gender and class and the realities that our democracy is under attack, and the forces that are attacking it are actually forces that really want democracy not to work. I I believe that in order to build a society that actually meets the promise of this country, we have to create the mechanisms for the people who've been pushed to the margins. Black folks, immigrant folks, Latino and Asian folks, poor folks, women, LGBTQ people, to be more at the center of every debate about how to shape policy. Because at the end of the day, policies are the agreements that we have with one another. That's what they are. So I think that every aspect of our lives needs to be both discussed in sort of like its material implications, but also the ways in which the different aspects of our lives happen differently depending on who you are and where you're born and the color of your skin. So I think talking about both like systemic racism and the way it shows up in our society and our economy, but also talking about people's dreams and people's struggles and people's aspirations for their lives is really important. I have been very disheartened by the way that the conversation about public safety has been used to advance an agenda that is fundamentally a regressive agenda that criminalizes Black and Brown communities and poor people. And it feels especially disheartening because it has taken so much effort to win improvements and to win important transformations in the criminal legal system in New York. And so to see the governor lead an effort to roll back bail reform and other important gains that we made in 2019 and have made over years is especially disheartening. Obviously, like elections are a moment when the press the conversation gets sort of limited to sound bites, and it's very complicated to break through the noise. But I feel like it is especially important, actually, in a moment like this, to remind all of us that politics should not be about politicians, but actually about people and about the lives that people live and the issues that people need to be addressed. So I feel especially committed to lifting up the voices and the priorities and the urgent needs of Black and Brown communities and immigrant communities who are often both criminalized, left behind, and often scapegoated. And you know, I think in order to do that, we need to have like a principled debate about how, you know, about the budget, which is what I try to do throughout the budget, and about the policies that are under discussion right now, and especially about the kind of state that we could have if we lean into a vision that is more inclusive, that is more respectful, and that ultimately has sort of the values of racial justice at the center.
Thank you. I'm going to ask if both people could keep their questions shorter, and if you could keep your answers a little shorter. I see that we have about 6 hands, so I know I asked a big one. I'm sorry. Harriet Skidelsky.
Thank you. Victoria, is she there? Oh, well, hi.
I'm sorry, who are you?
You.
The questions are to Ana Maria Archila. Harriet.
Right, that's what I meant. That's what I meant. But is she still here?
I'm here. I'm here.
Yeah.
Oh, hi. So I've been to a lot of these forums, and one of my favorite catchphrases is affordable housing. And I would like to know, as someone that doesn't fit into the public housing category or the luxury housing category, can you give me what the definition of affordable housing is? Because every single building that is going up, oh no, we have 20% that's affordable housing. What is affordable housing? And what is the process for people who need affordable housing to get an apartment in one of those new buildings? Because I have no idea. And I hear so many different stories, but I do hear affordable housing from everyone who's campaigning or has won their role. That's my question.
Yeah, thank you for that question. Affordable housing should be housing that people who live in the neighborhood can pay for. Like literally, it should be the housing that is within the means of people who have lived in this community and whatever the particular community is in that moment. And I agree with you about the frustration of the definition of affordable housing, that it's actually not, it doesn't accurately represent people's ability to access that housing. Jumani Williams and I have put together a housing plan that starts out with a bold vision that we should redirect the efforts of the economic development councils of the state of New York away from projects like a stadium in Buffalo, or not even in Buffalo, right outside of Buffalo, or other projects that are sort of like a bridge to nowhere, and instead use the economic development capacity and money and authority of the state to build permanently affordable housing. There was a time when New York taxed millionaires at a fair, in a more fair way, in the 40s and 50s and 60s. And during that time, New York State was able to build a lot of public infrastructure, public parks, Michilama housing, the SUNY educational system. And since that time, we have had millionaires have sort of taken over our state, and the real estate industry has dominated the agenda in Albany. And since then, we have actually stopped building truly affordable housing for teachers, public sector workers, nonprofit workers, low-wage workers, and instead we have essentially given the real estate industry the task of building housing. And guess what? They have built housing that is unaffordable for most people.
I'm sorry.
It is not a solution.
I'm sorry, I'm going to interrupt just for 1 minute to say that we're out of our initial 15 minutes of time, but I know we have a little more time. So I think if it's okay with everyone, we can keep going. And if you want, I can do like a 1 or 2 minute timer on responses, whatever works.
Yeah, I'm sorry, I keep talking so long.
No, I know. We're just figuring this out as we go along. So if you want to wrap up this answer and then we can get to a few more questions. Does that sound okay?
Yeah.
Okay, great.
So all of that to say that we cannot continue to give for-profit housing developers the task of solving the housing affordability crisis, because they won't. It is not in their interest, and they are not able to do it. The state needs to take over the responsibility of actually addressing the affordable housing crisis that New Yorkers are facing all across the state. Jumani and I put a housing plan together that includes protections for tenants. So we should pass good cause eviction legislation. We should make sure that people who don't have homes that there is a path to creating and supportive housing and the systems of support for people who are houseless right now. But we have to build permanently affordable housing, and we have put a plan that would build 1 million units of social housing. So housing that would be affordable for public sector workers by redirecting the efforts of the economic development councils, regional councils across the state, to be focused on the task of building permanently affordable housing for the people who are precisely like you, sort of sandwiched, like not able to access public housing and totally priced out of the luxury housing that is sort of market driven.
Thank you. Lauda.
Hi. Regarding healthcare, what's your plan so that healthcare becomes more affordable for New Yorkers?
I believe that we should have we should pass the New York Health Act. I see the clock. Thank you, Caroline. So I believe that New York should pass the New York Health Act. So we should. I believe in universal healthcare. It is like housing, a system that if it continues to be sort of driven by profit is not going to address people's needs. In the short term, efforts to expand access to healthcare are really important. The governor, the recent budget passed sort of an expansion to healthcare that unfortunately or intentionally left out immigrant families, which is both incredibly cruel and I believe totally unnecessary because New York has the money to make healthcare available through the essential plan to immigrants, and the governor chose not to. We need to make sure that there are investments, and not just in health insurance, but actually in the sort of continuum of healthcare. So access to home care, investments in the home care infrastructure so that home care workers have good wages that allow them to stay in their jobs and have and allow the state to grow the infrastructure of home care is incredibly important as well. But I will do as much as I can, whatever I can, to make sure that we are advancing in the direction of universal healthcare, because I believe healthcare is a human right and should not be relegated to a for-profit infrastructure.
Thank you so much. I always hate to cut this off. Diana Reyna's with us and she's been waiting for a little while. Everyone who still has questions, please put them in the chat and we'll make sure to send them ahead and get some answers for them. Thank you very much for joining us, Ana Maria. It's a pleasure to meet you. And thank you.
It is a pleasure to meet you. And I also want to appreciate you for inviting me. One thing that I failed to say is obviously, you know, Diana and I have been like sort of blazing a trail together as two Latinas running for statewide office. If one of us wins, we would be the first Latinas to win statewide. I would also, if I were to win, I would be the first LGBTQ person to be elected statewide. And it is really quite unfortunate that the governor has interfered with an election that was a fair election to now sort of drown out our voices with a new opponent who was just introduced a week ago. So I just want to say, I'm feeling indignation at the reality of a governor who gets to change the rules in the middle of the game to interfere with an election that was fair and robust already.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Diana Reyna, thank you so much for joining us. I'm very sorry we ran a little over. It's these 15, 20-minute forums just aren't enough to really hear about people. So you have at least 15 minutes. If you need a few minutes more, you have waited, and I apologize for that. So please do a presentation for as long as you like, and then we will take time for Q&A.
I do want to hear from you, and I'm happy to come back at any point as well. I have another screening that unfortunately was scheduled for the same time with 15 minutes apart. So none of this is going to ever be sufficient. I think the dialogue that we're having is part of what the democratic process should be. It should be an ongoing conversation. And that is one of the things that I wish our party would do more of. I am Diana Reyna. I'm running for lieutenant governor. This statewide race has become one of the most significant lieutenant governor races in the history of New York State. We have seen what has been a corruption crisis in our state. We have seen what has been a education crisis. We have seen what is a healthcare crisis. We have seen what is an affordability crisis in our state. I am entering this race, or have entered this race, because I have seen what is the deterioration of hard work and impact that I had already participated in the political process, having started at the young age of 20 when I was still in college, working for my local assemblyman in Williamsburg, Bushwick, not the Williamsburg, Bushwick people know today. The Williamsburg, Bushwick I grew up in from the 70s and 80s. My mother is Dominican, from Dominican Republic, as well as my father, who's since passed 5 years ago. I served in the council for 12 years. I was a chief of staff to the assemblyman. Once I continued to work in his office, I served as deputy borough president in my last, before I moved on to run my own business. I built a consulting business after politics. So this is a opportunity for a voice of reason, common sense, to be able to bring people united. I think that we all have very common fears and anxiety. I am the mother of 2 kids, 14 and 16, that attend public schools, high schools in Manhattan. My husband is a lieutenant with the NYPD, and my years of public service, well over 22 years, provides what is proven leadership, a track record, the opportunities to understand government, where it functions and where it does not, the opportunities to be able to bring people together, to address problems, to raise problems and address them together. I have been traveling the state. There's more common areas than differences. We have what is a fentanyl opioid problem in Yates County, as well as Bronx County. We have what is an economic development starvation for revitalizing community in what would be Binghamton, Broome County, as we do in the community of Brownsville, Kings County. These are areas that once upon a time thrived with manufacturing industrial jobs. My mom, a seamstress, when she came to this country in 1965 to work what would be factories in what is considered today Soho, Tribeca, in Williamsburg and Bushwick, and had to convert herself, transformed into what would be a second career when the jobs in the textile industry began to die, move away. The opportunities for her to be able to go back to begin a new skill set as a home attendant. And she did that for 20 years. And unfortunately, she paid into her pension system, and yet the Ladies Garment Union bankrupt. And so she has no pension from 20 years in that industry. Today, she has a pension of $52 as a home attendant on monthly to supplement what would be her Social Security benefits. But this is the reality of what we're talking about here. She's a homeowner. That is why she's able to age in place. We all know too well what it is to be displaced out of community. We went through that in Williamsburg back in the 90s, late 80s, and the opportunities to be able to never go through that situation or allow for anyone else to live through that. I found myself as an 8-year-old translating in court. My mother doesn't speak English. She's Spanish speaking. She has a 5th grade education. We have an opportunity here to really impact people's lives. And I know that the day we passed English language access in the city of New York, it was for people like my mother and many New Yorkers who need assistance in every category of service. We are a state that is in demand for an accountability, the opportunity to be able to address what is transparency, to be able to bring services out of Albany and into community. That requires what is leadership that understands how to do that and isn't afraid of doing that. When we hold our government accountable, we inspect what we expect out of our government. And so with that, I just want to hear from you. And again, it is a pleasure to be here with you all. Thank you for the invitation.
Thank you for joining us. I think I'm going to start, I'll save my question for a few minutes and start. Paul, is your hand up again, or is this from the last time? Okay, so let's start with Paul.
Thank you. Hi, Ms. Reyna. Thank you so much for joining us. We really appreciate it. I just had a quick question. Your running mate, Mr. Swazi, has said that if elected governor, he will fire our Manhattan District Attorney, Alvin Bragg, who was elected last year. Do you agree with that? Do you share that opinion? And if so, why? Thank you.
DA Bragg was elected by the people, and Tom understands that. I think as the widow of the officer that was killed, who's in her eulogy to her husband, her late husband, was just as angry as everyone else. We started 8 years ago in an administration where we lost 2 officers in Brooklyn. And then we repeat the beginning of a new administration for 8 years, or for the first 4 years, what is another set of officers killed in the first 100 days of this administration. There is a unsettling feeling amongst every New Yorker of public safety. There is a need for us as a city, as a state, to start addressing these issues. These are not, the dog, I lost my dog scenario. These are frightening, and the opportunities to be able to address what is public safety requires what is a partnership with the state elected officials and the city executive, chief executive, right? There is a need to work with our district attorneys. There is a need to work with our special prosecutors. There is a need to work with our chief administrative judge. We have to bring everyone to the table as partners to be able to start beginning to stem the tide on public safety. We cannot function in a society where we're expecting to go to work, go to school, get home safely when we have crime terrorizing communities.
Thank you very much. Bill Ferns.
I'm sort of inclined to follow up on that, but I'd have to sort of piece my argument together. So I'm going to go a different direction. Maybe someone else can come up with their question. Though I didn't get a sense that there was an answer about whether Mr. Swazi would actually fire Bragg. My question is about Department of Education and at a much more mundane level, the inability for the Department of Transportation in New York City to put out all the traffic cameras at once because of rules about home rule in New York State and New York City. So right now, the mayor has to go like every couple of years and basically bow down before the state to get reapproval of the mayoralty control of the Department of Education. And right now, New York City is the only city in the state that's limited to the number of traffic cameras it can have. It can only have 150 traffic cameras. And as we know, vehicular deaths, if we're worried about sort of people's well-being, vehicular deaths often outrun gunfire deaths in New York City. This year, not so much because of the scourge of a gunfire, but previous years, more people have died from vehicles than they've died from gunfire. So why do you believe the state should still keep the city from governing its own Board of Education and from governing its own Department of Transportation? Thank you.
So Bill, I just want to preface this by saying in some communities, perhaps vehicular traffic deaths happened more so than gun violence. Brownsville was not as fortunate. East Flatbush was not as fortunate. And so when we think about what is the comparison of both, we have to be mindful of communities that are not as fortunate as you just described. as far as home rule message, this is the constitution of how our states is governed. And so the opportunities to be able to explore where there is room for changes, right? The opportunity to be able to participate in the state constitution convention, right? To change these rules. This is something that we can explore. And if there are areas that you can share that we should be mindful of for us to take into consideration. This is not a process that gets done overnight silently by the few. And so I think it's opportunity for us to all look at where there's improvement within our state rules and regulations to give us the legroom to be able to bring us to speed on society's functions today, as opposed to what would be, 100, 200 years ago. I see a
Thank
thumbs
you.
up, that's why I stopped.
If I might, there's a lot in the chat about not feeling like there was a clear answer about the removal of Alvin Bragg. And I think people are interested in that. So
I think I remembered what I said. So I want to be very clear. He was elected by the people.
okay,
So if you want to take that as I am not supportive or I do not agree, I want to listen from you on many different issues. And so I want to be sure that I don't get into this she said, he said business as far as what Tom Suozzi said versus what Diana said.
okay, fair enough. I just wanted to follow up with that. We have another question. How are you doing with time? I know you have a time crunch.
I sent Jerome the message to please let the screening committee for the next screening that I'll be a few minutes late. That started
Okay.
at 7:45, so I'm hoping I can take one or two more questions.
Great, thank you. Luana.
Hello.
Hi,
Thank
Luana.
you. Thank you for being here. Thank you, DID, for holding this important forum to get to know the candidates. It's really awesome. Ms. Reyna, I want to thank you for your explanation of several things, but I wonder if you know about Manhattan. I am currently the president of the Chelsea Reform Democratic Club, just recently elected, and I was on my Penn South Co-op Council board, Co-op Council representative rather, not the board. And we have a fight going on here about the MTA substation that they're planning to put on 28th Street between 8th and 9th Avenue. In addition, we have the Vernado takeover of the 30s and the eminent domain possibility of people being evicted from their homes and being replaced with large towers, large office towers. Governor Hochul was approving of this plan to have this area demolished and rebuilt. And we don't need another Hudson Yards over here in this area, but I was wondering, have you had any conversations in reference to what is happening in our area here in Midtown? Thank you.
Thank you, Luana. I just wanted to share, when I was in the council, those conversations were starting, and we're in a very different time right now compared to when I was in the council. I served 12 years and I ended in 2013. And there was discussion about rezoning the Midtown area that we were not in support of, I included. One of the reasons was because we were trying to preserve what was the garment district. I'm an avid, as I mentioned before, staunch advocate for manufacturing industrial. Maintaining these buildings are very important to the preservation of the opportunity to be able to create an economic development for what is the creation of jobs, to be able to see these buildings not be turned over to residential or commercial allows us the bandwidth to be able to bring back industry in today's modern world. Once we give them up, then we lose what is any potential to develop them once again. The last and only development of industrial buildings were in the Brooklyn Navy Yard, and that's building 77. So we're not in the business anymore of building industrial buildings. And once we give them up, they're gone forever. So I just wanted to preface by saying that you're bringing to my attention what is the most current discussions regarding what is the development in this area. And I know that I will commit to making sure that there is oversight, that there's a sense of understanding as to what it is that the community is interested in seeing. I don't know what the community has put forth. And if you can share that, Luana, I can certainly put my email address on the chat so that way you have it. And I'd be happy to read that material and certainly bring it into the fold of the campaign.
Well, thank you. Mr. Williams, really quickly, Mr. Williams has done several press conferences outside of 34.
Luana, I'm really sorry, but there's another
Thank you.
hand and we're
Okay.
actually out of time.
So
Thank you.
I will get in touch with you. Thank you so much. for your time.
Catherine, quick question and a quick answer, please. We really are out of time. Catherine. Oh, you got it. Okay.
Hi. Okay, yeah, hi, Diana, thank you for
Hi.
addressing us. Try and make this quick. On the east side, we used to have a gorgeous 50-acre park that half of which has now been reduced to a desert, really. But what we're dealing with now is we are unable to get any kind of air monitoring results from what used to be the East River Park. And just today, there were asbestos trucks around and people in hazmat suits. We know that there is lead, arsenic, other heavy metals, volatile organic chemicals out there. We are absolutely unable to get any kind of reading from the monitors that are out there. And in fact, the last time we asked, the city told us we would have to do a FOIL request. We don't know what we're breathing. There are some 100 units of NYCHA housing directly next to this park in an area that already has high asthma rates, had high COVID deaths. And I'll keep it quick.
That's the, Kathy, can you wrap up the
Like
question?
some help with it. What can you do for us?
Well, one of the things that as Lieutenant Governor is holding an agency like the Department of Environmental Conservation to step up to the plate, to be able to, by authority, install air monitoring for the community to be able to get transparent public information. I know they do that right now with the brownfield sites, the designated Superfund sites. I, of which I'm not proud to say, have 3 of them in Brooklyn. So the opportunities to be able to work with agencies with higher authority allows you the bandwidth to be able to change the relationship between what
Come
is.
in, even though we've asked them to.
Say that again?
The state has been unwilling to come in. They say the city's handling it.
Well, that's when then we have to put the city and the state together on the same call in a forum in front of people and report, right? This is not, where are your elected officials bringing these folks together?
Okay,
I'm going to ask that we leave that here and perhaps you could follow up with Diana. And Diana, perhaps you could help negotiate something to make that call happen. That would be really great. I want to thank you very much for coming today and joining us. I want to thank my Grand Street Dems team members for putting this together, and very pleased that our sister clubs, DID, VID, HKD, Luan, I think you're from another club, for joining us tonight.
CRDC.
I'm sorry?
CRDC.
And DRDC. So it's really nice to have all the clubs come together. The other clubs have done a lot of these forums. I'm very pleased that we were able to do this one tonight and that we had such nice attendance. That said, I'm going to ask that everybody who's not a Grant Street Dems member leave the meeting so that we can, or a I don't mean a voting member, I just mean a Grant Street Dems member, to stay and discuss and talk about some next steps for us, and ask everybody else to go. And with all due respect and all pleasure in having had you here tonight. Bye.
Bye, everybody.
Bye. Catherine, you have another question? You're muted. You're muted.
Yes, I am. Sorry, I was just going to suggest that you had two other candidates that you might, you had Rachel Levine, who has opposition, and I have opposition, and I was going to ask if we have a chance to say something, but next time maybe.
Sorry, yeah. Okay. For all of you who did not get to ask questions, is everybody else who's still on part of the Dems? Okay, so we have two more things we want to do. Alec, I know that I thought you were going to speak at 8:15, so I'm going to ask if you can just hold on for a minute. Grace Lee is here, and I know she has an 8 o'clock meeting, and I asked her to come in and just give us an update about her campaign. Alec, is that okay? Yes, cool. Okay. Grace.
Hi, Marion, are we still recording or for
Yes.
this part of the, okay.
We're doing it all in one. Julie will fix
Okay.
it later.
Oh, okay, great. No problem. Well, thanks everyone for having me. Hope everyone had a great Mother's Day. There have been so many shifts in the upcoming elections. For now, as it stands, the assembly race and the governor's race, the lieutenant governor's race are still planned for June 28th. And so my campaign is operating under that, that assumption until changed. You know, we are out knocking on doors and doing phone banking. We've called over 1,000 people in the last, you know, in the last month alone, as well as have knocked on hundreds of doors. And so just wanted to get out, would love to get the support of Grant Street Dems on your doors. We have a big day of action on Tuesday from 6 to 8 p.m. with some commitments from a number of members. So just give a shout out to Catherine and Lee and Jeremy, who've all volunteered, and would love to see more of you out. If you have time next Tuesday from 6 to 8, I'm just going to throw a link into the chat. And if you can't do Tuesday, we're going to do other days of action, and I would love to come by and knock doors with you in your buildings. Is obviously, you know, the relational aspect of a neighbor knocking on your door and talking about a campaign and a candidate is really powerful. And so, you know, again, I'm just so proud and honored to have the endorsement of Grant Street Dems, and really appreciate all the work that you've put in already to support the campaign. And we're gonna go to the end. Today is day 50 to the election day, so it's coming up really quickly on us. And that's about it. And, you know, we got some great endorsements recently, just as a update. DC 37, NICET, the teachers union, also endorsed us, and with some other great unions that we'll be rolling out soon. So really excited. Thank you.
You're muted.
I know. Sorry. Thank you. And thank you for being here. And also, I'm sorry she's not on the call tonight, but I wanted to welcome your new project manager. Is it field manager or project manager, Jasmine Sanchez? And she's been very involved with the club. So please let her know that we called her name and that we're really pleased to have her on board.
Yes, absolutely. I forgot. That's a huge update for us. We're so excited to have Jasmine on. She got COVID and then got pneumonia, so she's been out. It's been a rough 2 weeks for her, but she's been doing some work remotely, and she's gonna jump back into things soon.
Great. Well, thank you.
Thanks.
And please sign up, door knock, call, text, all the things that we're doing. We're also, Julie, do you want to talk about our our fundraiser for Grace?
Yeah, when a bunch of private citizens and I are going to organize something for Grace, so that is when we have details, we'll circulate it. So yeah, it's coming up June
Great.
8th, I believe. So, mhm.
Good. So yes, so we have it. Yeah, it's not really a Dems thing, but there's some of us in there. Okay, thank you. And now, Julie, while you're on, why don't you talk to us a little bit about sister clubs and introduce Alec?
I think Alec and his work as sister clubs may not need any introduction since they have worked with Grants for Dems in the past. And we're happy to have Alec with us tonight to fill us in on what's going on with the sister communities. And I'm going to turn the floor to Alec for him to cover it.
Great.
Okay. Thanks. Hi, everybody. I think I know most of you. You may remember me when I was three-dimensional and I had feet. I still do. So thank you, Grace. I appreciate that. So nomenclature, I and Emily, my wife, and our kids do a lot of volunteering with a nationwide organization called Sister District, which is no longer a really applicable name for what we do, but it is the name. So we do work with other clubs, but it's a state legislative campaign. And if you can give me 1 minute, I'll explain how it started and where it's going. After the 2016 election, there was a group of lawyers in California who noticed that there is a lot of bang for the volunteer buck in campaigning in state legislatures. State legislative districts are small. Most of them are gerrymandered. Most of the Democratic field had been inactive, literally or almost literally, for many years before 2016. We organized around the country to support candidates in Virginia in 2017 and won, and then moved, across the country and have had mixed success. We do a lot of our work through phone banking and fundraising, and last year and the year before we didn't do canvassing, but we're starting to do that again. So the thought is this: if you can marshal volunteer interest, this is more than a minute, I apologize, to from people elsewhere in the country to educate people about Democratic options in the state legislature, Democrats will win much more of the time. That was sort of resoundingly true in 2017, 2018, 2019. Then in 2020, the Republicans kept canvassing and the Democrats did not, and we got into a little bit of a hole. So we were back on the hustings this year campaigning in Pennsylvania. And what I would love to do with you guys is have some sort of pipeline of volunteers for phone banks, which are going to be in person and on Zoom starting next week for our candidate whose name is Melissa Serrato. And if there's interest in running a trip out to Montgomery County, Pennsylvania in the fall, I would love to do that as well. So that's what I'm talking about right now, but I'm happy to answer questions or explain anything that's unclear.
Does anyone have any questions for Alec? Yeah,
Sorry,
Keith.
Alex, can I just ask quickly?
Yeah, go ahead.
Is Montgomery County in Pennsylvania or Virginia?
Montgomery County, sorry, is in Pennsylvania. Virginia has off-year elections, so
okay.
Yeah,
we'll be back there next year.
Who in Montgomery County, or is there a particular candidate we're thinking about supporting, or?
Well, there are likely to be two candidates in Pennsylvania. You're from there?
I was there at one point, but tell me, why Montgomery County?
There's a national staff that chooses all the candidates based on how other Dems did in recent elections and who the candidate is in terms of training and credential, and they assign them to teams based on request and proximity. In Montgomery County, the candidate is a woman named Melissa Serrato. She is running against one of these Republican wolves in sheep's clothing, a guy named Todd Stevens, who presents moderate and votes extremist. She is actually the district manager for the legislator from the next district over, who is a sister district success story, a woman named Liz Hambidge, who unseated a Republican in 2018. So I think we're in Montgomery County because we think we can win there. And more broadly, we think we can win throughout Pennsylvania because Pennsylvania legislative maps were redrawn this year after a court fight in a way that gives Democrats an opportunity to play more offense than you might think. Also, we can get there in a short amount of time.
Thank you.
Any other questions? So Alec, can you leave your information in the chat so people know how to reach out to you and volunteer for? And no other questions about that?
I'm just gonna share my experience. I've helped Alec with some sister district stuff, and the phone banking is, obviously we've all phone bank, it's easy, but also just some fun events surrounding supporting a candidate for fundraising. Like, well, it was in person once upon a time with cocktail parties, but also just like trivia nights and fun little Zoom activities that are minimal fundraising but a big impact. So
thanks for the reminder. Can I just say really quickly, we are having an in-person trivia on June 5th up in the Gramercy area. I'm not going to be there, but that doesn't mean that you shouldn't, or maybe it's all the more reason that you should. That's from 3 to 5, and those are not enormous amounts of money, but again, sort of the bang for the buck comes in. If you raise $1,000 for a state legislative candidate, especially this early, that's yard signs and pizza and flyers and things like that that can really make the difference. These races are very, very close.
Will you put that actual information in the chat in case people want to come to Gramercy Park?
Sure. And Julie had said that maybe I could send a paragraph for recap.
That would be great.
Which I'll do as well.
We can put it in our blast and put it up on our website.
Great.
Thank you. Thank you for the work you do, and thank you for coming by tonight.
My pleasure.
I'm
Thanks
sorry if you had to wait.
No, it's I learned a lot.
Good. Great. Okay. So that's I have some questions I would like us to discuss, and then a couple of more issues that we might want to take on. So one of the questions to discuss is so we had also tried to get Antonio Delgado to come tonight. After a lot of back and forth, his team decided he could not come. He probably has a gazillion invitations to present. By the way, Carolyn, thank you so much for timekeeping. I really appreciate your work at that. So I guess the question is, not that we are not prepared to do an endorsement vote.
We lost you, Marion.
I think we lost her.
Yeah, let's here. I think let's wait for Marion to reconnect. But I think what we were gonna. Oh, there she is. You back, Marion?
Here I am. Okay, sorry. Okay, so what I want to know is, in the absence of hearing from Antonio Delgado, and if I've talked to a few people about this already, and do people want to try to talk to Antonio Delgado and then re-endorse? Do people want to re-endorse with one of the two candidates we met with tonight? Do people not want to re-endorse? I'm just curious in how people are feeling about this at this point. Any thoughts, Carolyn, Sandra?
He's not unwilling to come. He just couldn't come tonight, right?
Yeah.
Right, so we have a little time. Maybe we can do it again and have him come.
Okay,
hey,
that's others.
Marion, if I can throw in.
Wait, let's do one at a time. I'm sorry.
Okay.
Jeremy's had his hand up, then Kenny, then Carolyn.
Thanks, Marion. Yeah, I'll say more or less what I said to you the other day, which is even though these endorsements, local endorsements, are not, mission critical for these campaigns, especially statewide campaigns, I do think the club kind of owes it to the neighborhood to consider who's running and make our suggestion. I don't think that has to happen at this point. We normally make these endorsements early so that we can do petitioning. At this point, we don't really need to make an endorsement before, sometime before early voting starts. And if there's a chance to hear from the other candidate and then vote on an endorsement, I think that would be great. If you guys don't think there's a chance that we'd hear from the other candidate, I would go ahead and take the opportunity now to vote on an endorsement.
Okay, thanks. I did put the request out to hear from him about rescheduling, so I don't know if we'll hear about that or not. Carolyn.
So do we, just in terms of housekeeping, for me and for everyone else, no one's repetitioning, right? Like, this is just, this can't, how is this? What happens if, what happens with Delgado? Who, I know that there was just a law passed, so Benjamin will not be on the ballot, correct?
Mhm.
Or endorsed. Can we just sort of go over what is happening right now? So we know what our endorsement means beyond a recommendation to vote for this person.
No, I'm not sure I have all the answers. Jeremy and I had a long talk about this just yesterday, and it's just unclear if there's going to have to be petitioning again, if what it's going to take to get, people on the ballot. And it may be a little premature to make a decision based on that because we don't know yet.
Marion, may I for a minute?
Yes, please.
I think these questions are less ambiguous for the governor and lieutenant governor's race, because the actual borders of the state are not being challenged by the court. So assuming that primary still happens in June, that's the one piece of this that's, I guess, still up in the air. It's possible that they consolidate all the primaries to August. But assuming that primary still happens in June, the lieutenant governor candidates do not need to repetition. Delgado's being named by I guess the equivalent of the committee to fill vacancies now that Benjamin is off the ballot. So there's no more petitioning to happen for lieutenant governor.
Okay, thank you. That's helpful. Kenny's had tried to have his hand up for a while, so I'm going to call him first.
I just want to suggest June 16th endorsement at our in-person meeting.
If we're going to do another endorsement, or you're saying you want
Yes,
to, and that would be a good time.
I think not doing an open vote, it just gets those turnout in person, June 16th, possible endorsement vote. That's what I want to say.
Okay, and let me ask you then if it's, that will be just before early election. So, but it's not too late to do it. Also, do you think it matters if we have heard from Antonio Delgado by then or not? You don't have to answer that right away.
Heard from him. If we haven't, my opinion, if we haven't heard from him by then, we still do the vote. This gives them enough time to speak.
Okay.
Somewhere.
Bill, then Catherine, then Keen.
Kenny and I were laughing because we kept on using the wave logo instead of the raised hand, and it kept disappearing. And we finally figured it out. That's why I
was wondering. I wasn't lowering your hands.
Sorry, I understand the need for process, but I'm going to raise this again. I raised it last time, and we did have a forum today. I don't see realistically how a club that endorsed Jumaane Williams for governor is going to reasonably support the Governor Hochul's choice for lieutenant governor in the election. I just don't see it happen. First of all, it's clear she doesn't really care about the Manhattan votes because she did the Buffalo deal and she sent a lot of money to Long Island. So she's much more worried about them than us. If they're not really going to deal with us when they're prospects, why are they gonna, they need our votes? I just don't see it's worth putting it off. I mean, personally, I don't see Diane Reyna being a choice either because of her evasive answers, but I don't think we need to put this off any longer. It's just, again, I understand the need for process. We're doing the process. I don't care where the guy is. He could have spent 15 minutes in somewhere to talk to us. They're not voting in Congress right now. He didn't have to travel here. He just had to zoom in. So I'm inclined to let's just move forward. Thank you.
Thank you. Catherine.
There it goes. Okay. Well, yeah, I was going to say that whatever Jeremy said about the fact that he's on the ballot, but this is the one chance that we get to vote for the lieutenant governor separate from the governor because they become a package deal after this. And we could end up, and certainly Hochul could end up with another candidate. But I mean, I know a little bit about Anthony Delgado because I have a house upstate in the area he represents. And he's, I mean, now that he's agreed to do this, he was a real chance to keep a Democratic candidate up there. But I think it doesn't hurt us to at least hear from him. I mean, he's articulate. He has represented, he has been a liberal progressive voice in an area that's usually Republican. So I think it wouldn't hurt for us to hear from him. And I think, to be fair, he's only been the lieutenant governor candidate for a short time, and he's probably juggling appearances throughout the state. I also just wanted to, let people know, P.S. Yes, I'm running for state committee and I can use help too, but that we probably won't know for sure until tomorrow, whether if the assembly will be delayed or if it will continue and run at the primary at the same time that the statewide candidates are. So, and hopefully, since the assembly lines were kind of approved by both the Democrats and the Republicans, I don't think they'll change a lot, hopefully. But yeah, we don't know about what's going on with petitioning for the state Senate candidates or the Congress, because those lines probably are going to change. So a lot of this is still going to be up in the air. So I wouldn't be surprised if we had to have a few more meetings than we intended to.
Thank you. Keen.
Yes, I think we should postpone the vote because I think we believe in democracy, which means we listen to everybody and then we vote. So I think it would be sort of counter to our mission as a club to vote prematurely. So I think we ask if he can come, and if he can't, he can send a representative. Can't that happen? I mean, I think we have to, at least, just like we did with Diana Reyna, we have to give the respect of we listen to people who want this office.
Yeah, I just want to interject that he, we went back and forth with them. It was very last minute because he only just became lieutenant governor, and they repeated that they would like to find a time to make it work. So I just want everyone to know that I don't think it was that.
Thank you, Melissa. And also let me ask, so Ian, you're next, but I just want to interject. So if we sent out an email that says next Monday at 8 o'clock, we're going to meet for a half hour so we can listen to the third lieutenant governor candidate and do an OPA vote or do an in-person vote. However we do it, is that going to fly? Are people going to make it their business to try to show up? Oh, I hear that resounding yes. Thank you, Carolyn.
Yes, I would.
Yes.
You do have a conflict
would-
with the downtown Dems, just saying, because they're meeting next Monday also. That may not be a problem, but just mentioning it.
Okay, well, you know, at this point, we have a limited time. I am willing to host another meeting, invite the same clubs to come. If one of them has him, then we'll go to that one. And then to do our vote either in person or OPA. Ian.
Hi, I don't have a strong feeling about when we vote, but I do have a strong feeling that I know was reflected by other people in the chat. But if you weren't reading the chat, I do want to just like call out how outrageous it is that Ms. Reyna both is willing to accept her running mate's view that the democratically elected outstanding district attorney should be removed, but also doesn't have the courage of the conviction to either support her running mate or to take a separate stand against that position, to speak in this sort of coded language of he's democratically elected, but I won't get into a game of he said, she said, I think is really insulting to us as well as outrageously anti-democratic. And of course, there is absolutely no reason, this is not even a merits issue. There's absolutely no reason, even if it is technically possible, which I disagree with Ben Yee about, there's absolutely no merit to removing Alvin Bragg, who is working hard and was of course endorsed by Grand Street Dems. So if we postpone until later date, I just hope everyone remembers how outrageous one of Diana Reyna's responses was, in my opinion.
And Ian, might I ask you to come to that meeting and to remind us if we don't remember, because that's an appropriate discussion that we should have. I'm going to do something I don't usually do this time. I'm looking to Melissa and Julie and see if they're going to smack me, which is to put the chat up on the YouTube so that people can remember. So we'll have the forum itself and then the chat so people can remember the pushback about the lack of a distinct answer to that question. I think that's okay. I think it's pretty public. There was lots of people here, so good plan, Ian.
Well, it's okay by me, but yes,
Do the
I think
private chats also go up?
No.
Okay.
No, I don't believe so.
Then it's
I will
fine.
double check. I will double check, and if so, I'll go through them and take the private ones away.
Anyway, I'm just saying, let's all remember how.
I think it'll be hard for all of us to forget, Ian. But.
Good. Okay. But I know sometimes I only half listen to the conversation. So for those of you who are half listening, this was intended as a reminder.
Thank you. Lee.
I'm always amazed at how professional politicians are able to answer questions or not answer questions purposefully. And as Ian pointed out, and so many others in the chat, Diana Reyna did a wonderful job of avoiding directly answering the question, and how she phrased it says so much. Also to Ian's point, I would suggest that we at least give another opportunity for the third candidate to speak. As Melissa pointed out, the negotiations or the last minute invite was difficult. As a Democratic club whose founding principles are for transparency, it's certainly something that we should afford him. If he's ultimately not able to attend, then at that point we can certainly go forward with our vote. Thank you.
Okay, thank you everybody for your input. So what I'm left with is that I will follow up with trying to set another appointment. Perhaps Melissa will help me because she was our original connection. We will try to make it a time that we normally meet, and that we will go ahead and do an endorsement vote after we hear. And before we do the endorsement vote, per Ian's conversation, we'll have a conversation like we would have had if all three were there. I liked this about what Ana Maria said. I didn't like this about what Diana said. Remind ourselves of the things that did not feel kosher to us in terms of our endorsement. Does that sound good?
Yes.
Thank you very much. That was, I appreciate that discussion. Okay, so how are we all doing? Pretty done, huh? Let me say if you,
Great, yeah.
what, we're doing great?
We're
Or
great, we're great, yeah.
Thanks, Carolyn. So a couple of things. We are going to have a Grand Street Dems participatory budget. And we're not going to give you all the details tonight. We will start sending them out. We are looking to fund up to $1,500 in local projects. So, I mean, one thing that comes to mind, I'm not suggesting this per se, but the climate and sustainability group might want composting bins. So that's one thing. Okay, so that's one possibility. So we have decided that we could budget up to $1,500. That could be, and that each proposal would not go over 500, but it could be as low as 100. So I guess conceivably we could fund 15 projects. Is that right? Yeah. Anyway, Julie has done a beautiful graphic of what the process will look like. We will make sure to blast that out. We will have at our June 16th in person, we will have signups. We will make sure people know how to go to our website and apply. And we will also have an updated timeline so that we will know when we will need certain information by, and then when we will make decisions by, and third, when we will give out money by. So that's really just an announcement. If there's any questions based on that, we're happy to answer them. Harriet?
Is anybody available to give me some kind of a tutorial on how to do all this stuff on the computer? Because I've actually, I haven't been going to work for a while. I fractured the tibia in my right knee.
Ow.
And I'm not like really getting around that much. So I definitely want to do more than I can on the computer. So I'm just throwing this out there. If anybody could just, help me out with, all this technical stuff, I'd really appreciate it.
Do we have any volunteers?
I mean,
Bill
you could always like
Burns.
email me, at some
No,
point.
Bill's hand is up. I would say he made a living doing that. Let him do it for you.
Okay.
Excellent, good. That's a match. So you know how to get in touch with each other, right? Okay, and then during our next meeting, probably not at June 16th, but in our next, in Zoom or in-person meeting, I would like us to have a discussion about congestion pricing. I think it's a contentious issue. I know people feel both ways about it. I've had requests for our position. Does Grand Street Dems have a position on congestion pricing? And I'm looking at 4 people on here that I know if I asked them their position, the answers would be different. So I would like us to get into the muck and take on the conversation and really see where we all are. And if given where we all are, we could begin to step into it and come up with some kind of statement that we feel is reasonable as a club. And this is not something I'm laughing. The executive committee knows this, so I'm just going to say it. I can't even talk about this in my house. So that's how close the disagreement gets from me. But I'm open to, I think we have to talk about it. It's kind of a big deal and it's coming up. So I would like to really know where people are at. Lee, I think you have more specific information than I do. Is that true? And can you share it with us so we can send it out to everyone? Like timing, how much, the whatever, the guidelines.
The first deadline for public comment passed, I think, on April 27th. The MTA is going to open up another period of public comment. I forget the time on that. We can certainly send that out when they announced it. As was mentioned, right now the range that they are discussing is anywhere from $9 to $27 as a fee for everybody south of 61st Street. The only two carve outs so far mentioned are if you are in public housing earning less than $60,000 and or if you are officially disabled, if you qualify for some type of disability. Anybody else, no matter what your circumstances and what your income, anything else, will have to pay that fee every time you move your car out of or into the zone.
Thank you. And if there's a link that we can send out to people so they can get, so in thinking about it, getting all the information, so when we have the conversation, we can all be more informed rather than informing ourselves during the conversation. The zone, Melissa just asked, the zone is below 62nd Street. So it's coming off the FDR Drive, or I guess the West Side Highway, any place below 62nd Street, unless you've paid a toll. Is that right?
We don't know that yet.
Okay, yeah, so it's not that clear, but great. Thanks, Lee. Whatever information you could pass on would be very helpful. Catherine, did you have your hand up? Did you want to?
I did, but I didn't, I took it down because I didn't want to talk about congestion pricing, but I wanted to bring up another question. So I don't know if now is a good time or if
Yeah, let's move past it.
Oh, yeah, I kind of got that impression. Yeah. My question is more because I am a candidate and I'm wondering what we're doing about, do we have a campaign committee? What are we doing? Who's, when are we making decisions about stuffing buildings, doing tabling, doing letters, etc.?
We had a letter. It was printed and ready to go. And then the challenge to the Assembly District happened. So right now we're on hold. We are going to do that. We do not have a campaign committee. Is that something we've had in the past as a club?
Well, how did you make your determinations to send around, letters, dear neighbor letters about the club offices?
Basically, the executive committee.
Okay.
And so we will do that. And we did, like I said, we came up with a beautiful dear neighbor letter with lots of input. And the back of it was a ballot, which then became irrelevant. So until we know what's relevant, and we should know that very shortly, then we will go back to it.
Okay, so does the executive committee make all of those decisions? That's why I was wondering if there's a campaign committee. I mean, as a candidate, I have kind of an interest, so.
For now, use the executive committee, and if we really think we need to put together a campaign committee, we will.
Okay.
Thank you. Would you like to chair a campaign committee?
I can't chair a campaign committee and be.
I know.
I don't mind doing input, but.
I was just trying to pass it on. Okay, y'all. So
does anyone else want to chair a campaign committee?
Melissa, what?
Just throwing out there, does anyone else want to chair a campaign committee?
Thank you.
How about Jeremy?
Jeremy, are you still on?
Let's stick to the executive committee at this point.
Okay, I don't think Jeremy's on anymore.
Yeah, I know. Let's not assign people tasks.
That's a great thing to do when they're not here. No, I'm only kidding. I'm only kidding. If anybody would like to do it, please think about it and get back to us. For now, it will be the executive committee. I'll reach out to Jeremy and see if he has any interest.
I wanted to point out.
Executive committee is meeting about it?
All right, we've been meeting about it. It's been on our agenda. The problem is that things keep changing.
Okay, I just wasn't aware of it. That's all.
Yeah. Okay.
Catherine, all the endorsed candidates are, we've already made a list of tasks to get our June event organized. And so it's been divvied up. And so one of it is definitely to formally invite you to come and speak since you're one of our endorsed candidates. So that is where a lot of our energies are going to be placed for the month of June. Okay.
I'm just worried about campaigning. That's all.
Right.
Okay, well, that's one opportunity to meet people and to talk to them. and to, you know, to have
More
the,
about
to have a
getting
forum.
voters out.
What?
I'm worried about getting voters out, that's all. I mean, okay.
Okay. We all share that, Catherine. That's not, you know, yes. And we have to figure out if we have to be out getting petitions and endorsements done again. I mean, it just feels, at the moment, I feel a little overwhelmed by it all. Like, it's like, here we go again. We would have been further along had everything not continued to change. Is that the document, Bill, that talks about the congestion pricing? All right, so Bill just uploaded something in the chat that has information about congestion pricing. Catherine, I hear you. Maybe we can have a phone call about some ideas you have. Okay. All right. I'm going to say that unless there's anything else burning, that we call it a night. I will put together as soon as possible a meeting where we will hear from Antonio Delgado, if that is possible. And if it's not possible, then if it really looks like it's not going to be possible and we're getting closer to the June 16th date, maybe we get together and have a conversation and do an endorsement without having that forum. Is that reasonable? Yeah. Okay. Thank you everyone for coming, and I will look forward to seeing you all soon.
Thank you, Marion.
Thank you, everybody.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye, good night.
Thank you.